Thank you all for being here to our very first ever CEO Mum live event. This is a really big moment for me, so thank you for being a part of this experience. I started CEO Mum when I first became a mum to my twins, who are now 2 as of last weekend. Where does time go, honestly? And I couldn't find the conversations I needed. I wanted ones that were both about ambition and the overwhelm, not just the highlights, not just the motherhood, not just about career. I wanted that big, infused, juicy conversations about it all. I wanted the joys, the struggles, the identity shifts that we face, and that fire inside of us that at times I've definitely felt was just a flicker, and wanted to find ways that I could bring that back, because it all gets too much sometimes. So I created the thing that I couldn't find. For me, I really believe that CEO Mum is more than a podcast. It's a space to shine light on both the visible and invisible pressures of being a working mother today. And it's a space that I think for those unfiltered, honest, yet very practical, because I love a practical tip, conversations for women who are doing both. Not just going to work, they are going to work, building careers, raising families, sometimes thriving, sometimes we barely have it together. But the thing that we do is we're committed to ourselves, and we're committed to constantly showing up, even at times when it's really, really challenging. So thank you for being a part of this moment, and for showing up, for being in this room, and for sharing this space all together. Tonight's special guest's journey began with one single LinkedIn post. And honestly, this was a moment about the realities of returning to work, which I don't think we see on LinkedIn that much, because now with AI and people really positioning themselves very professionally on LinkedIn, this was a really raw, honest take. And this post clearly struck a chord because it reached over 14 million people. And that moment sparked something way bigger than that reach. So since then, Amy Grilli and Dr. Emma Harvey have been reshaping the working day, and they are the co-founders of the 5 Hour Club, which is who you guys are all excited to hear from today. And this is a platform, and they'll tell you a bit more about it when they join us, but it's a platform and a movement that's built to make work actually work for parents. And it's a model that values our time, honors people's talent, and it recognizes that becoming a parent doesn't make you less capable. It actually makes the system's limitations way more visible. So please help me welcome Amy and Emma. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
So I want to start by asking Amy, you posted this LinkedIn post that started it all. Honestly, it's incredible, and I think it really struck a chord because it was so honest, and it struck a chord with so many companies as well as parents that are navigating going back to work. You described that feeling as being stuck in an identity that no longer fit. Could you take us back to that time? Like, what was going on for you and what prompted you and inspired you to write that post? And what made you decide to share it publicly? And why do you think it got the reaction that it got?
Good question, and I still question myself to this day. But basically, at the time I had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I had been struggling because I had decided that I was going to take 5 years out of work, and I had thought about that. I used to be a teacher, and my previous job was at King's College Hospital in the hospital schoolroom there, and I couldn't go back to that job. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take 5 years out. I just sort of picked it out of the air and didn't really think much about it, and I was in an unfortunate position where I was able to do that. And at the time, I look back now and it's quite a naive decision because I didn't think about my career. I thought, well, when I'm ready to go back, I'll go and get a part-time job somewhere local. And I was a teacher because I wanted to be an an educational psychologist. And I thought, maybe I'll do my PhD when I'm on maternity leave, or, something ridiculous like that. And just did not think about that at all. And I thought, yeah, it'd be easy. I'll go back to my career after having children. I really wanted to spend the time working with them and being with them and growing them, So at that moment when I went to do the post, I didn't really think about it. I just felt horribly stuck. I'd taken these 5 years out. I had really struggled with who I was, what I looked like. I'd struggled with postnatal anxiety with my second child. And I tried a few things, but nothing was really fit. And honestly, it started with an identity crisis. My eldest was about to go to school, and I had that question of, what do you do at the school gates? And it just hit me for 6. I was like, well, what do I do? At the moment, I am mum. I am looking after my 2 boys. But I didn't feel like I wanted to say that. I didn't feel like I could say I was a stay-at-home mum. It didn't resonate enough with me. I was more ambitious than that. And not to say that stay-at-home mums are not, but it just didn't sit right. And I had all these ideas about my career, and I couldn't say anything. And I just had an identity crisis. And then it got to a point, all my friends started to go back to work, and I was like, well, what am I going to do now? I just felt stuck. I started to looking for part-time work to see if I could go and do my psychology degree after that, my PhD, and I just couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything to sort of fit within what I had. I had about 5 to 10 hours a week of child-free time. So I was like, well, what can I do in that time? And there was nothing. I'd look up part-time jobs. It'd be cleaner, Amazon delivery driver, all of these things. I was like, I've got a first degree in psychology. I can do more than this. So I just felt lost. And honestly, Emma, so we've been friends since NCT. I saw her cross and bouncing ball, and sort of she started to laugh. And I remember we went to a quiet moment. I thought, that is my person. So we'd been friends since then. And she had gone back and she changed career, and I'd been so inspired by her. And on her birthday that year, I felt really lost, and she sat me down and she basically coached me on this crappy party that I put her on for her birthday. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said about my, going back to psychology or going to do a beach school because it would fit around the childcare. And I said about doing the 5-hour club. I had this idea. I said, they're in school now. I've got this 5 hours a day where I could be really productive. And I said, well, I would like to work in that time. And if there were jobs out there, then I'd love to do that. And I was just, I don't know. And she said, that is the thing that you need to go and do. And I was like, okay. So bless her, on her birthday said, let's go and do a podcast, because I just wanted to know, does anybody else feel like this?
Mm-hmm.
I was doing all this stuff during the day. It was very invisible work. I was doing the cleaning and all the stuff around the childcare that people don't see. And I thought, well, we can see if everybody else feels like this or anybody else does. And, highlight all of the invisible work that goes on. And it started with that. And then about a month later, Emma, because she'd been back to work, had been on LinkedIn. I had never really been on LinkedIn, and she was getting more ragey at our play dates and was getting more and more ramped up about this, and we were sort of sharing these voice notes to each other. And just one day I thought, you know what, well, if we're going to do this 5-hour club thing, around the community, maybe we'll have to have employers on there at some point. So we need to go back onto LinkedIn. So I wrote this story, literally with a notepad and pen, when my sons are watching Sonic for the 20th time. and then on the bank holiday Monday in May, I just shared it on LinkedIn because, I thought nobody was going to read it. By the time I went to bed, it was about 2,000 impressions. My husband was going, because he uses LinkedIn like I use Instagram, like he'll trawl it. And I'm just like, what are you reading? Anyway, so I had no idea what was, meant to go on LinkedIn. And so by bedtime it was 2,000 impressions. The next day it was about 50,000 impressions. By the end of the first day it was 1 million impressions, and then 1 million hit every single day for the next 14 days. And Emma and I were just looking at each other like, okay, so what do we do with that?
And clearly people resonated very deeply with that, and you weren't alone. I love that you guys met on your NCT course, so you've been on this motherhood journey since the very beginning. At the time, you were dealing with similar pressures around going through those feelings of identity shifts, identity crisis. What did that forgetting look like for you?
I think it was the timing of it. So I was changing my career, and I was explicitly changing my career to do a flexible one that worked in the school hours for my children. But at the same time, because our oldest children were going to school, I was then thinking of, and this is why we want to start with the podcast of sharing stories, I was thinking of my sister, I was thinking of her family and friends. They were like, wait just a minute. They dropped out of the workforce. They accepted a job that they're massively overqualified for. And for myself at that time, because I was doing career change, I remember I wanted to look for roles that were flexible, that were part-time. And at one point, in my CV, I was like, okay, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete my PhD from my CV. So that's just 4.5 years of work and literally climbing mountains and doing so much work towards that. I'll tell you about the time I was in Tesco's, actually. It was the time I had an existential crisis in the spaghetti aisles. So if you've ever bought a one... yeah, I think we've all been there. And if you've ever been in Tesco's with a 1 and a 3-year-old trying to navigate and what to do for dinner again for the millionth time, and honestly I think I'd been to Tesco's the 3rd time that week just for something to do. And at this moment I had taken a year quote unquote off, and And again, I removed that from my CV. I said that it was a career change. It was a career change. I was doing a very intensive boot camp in data science to move into tech and to data. And that's what I included on my CV. But the real reason was to look after my 1-year-old who had pretty serious health issues at the time. But I was walking down the spaghetti aisle thinking, how am I here? Like, this is like, I'm trying to decide. I cannot decide what to do for dinner again. It's going to be spaghetti bolognese. And how am I here? Like, I need to use my brain. I want to do something. And I was working towards it. But at the same time, I was directly comparing myself to my husband, who was head of department at his university. And we have exactly the same qualifications, except I have one more degree. And what I was doing was removing these very clear parts of my identity. I am a scientist. I'm an educator. I have a PhD, and I was very willing to delete these parts. And that's why I think so much came together all at once, didn't it? Because I was navigating this career change. You saw me navigating this career change at the same time. And once I navigated it, I really was able to thrive. And when I had that support in place, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that part of myself. And that is a very important part of myself.
Once that post went viral and you started to see the responses, what did it shift within you guys? Like, did you feel more confident? Did you feel overwhelmed? What was happening at that point?
Yeah, I think like you really tapped into something, and kind of in that point leading up to when the post went viral, I started to go to like more conferences, or the conference with women in data, and Jolie Grilli was there, and she was talking about the motherhood penalty. I was like, wait just a minute, there's loads of problems here, and there's so much research, and I think you really tapped into what was a very core problem. It helped me to help my identity as a mother and someone who is ambitious. So I am absolutely never going to delete ever again my PhD, and that's why I put my doctor title in. There's a whole post on it. It's entitled "Dear Imposter Syndrome." So I think you can probably see my evolution of confidence over time, but really it's the confidence of that I am a mother also, and I am never going to delete that part of myself ever again.
Amen to that. There's this kind of quiet expectation that when you become a mum, life continues with just a couple of changes. Like, sure, you might have a few sleepless nights, and you kind of got to buy more nappies now and whatever. But actually, there's a lot going on here that we don't talk about, and there's a lot that we don't always feel prepared for. And it's not just about the logistics and the practical things. It can also be that deeper shift for us. So for many women, motherhood changes absolutely everything. Our careers may pause and sometimes permanently stop, and our friendships can shift. Your hobbies disappear. I know so many people that are stepping back from slowly society in loads of different ways. Your self-care becomes luxury, definitely for me. Wow, 10 minutes is now just like golden hour, and you're counting down that. But there was a meme that went viral that I saw that was like this woman in the shower who was having a cup of tea whilst also brushing her hair whilst on a Zoom call, and that is, I can relate to wanting to do everything all in that golden slot. Suddenly, we're not just raising children, but we are also trying to rebuild ourselves. And let's be honest, we weren't meant to do this all alone, right? Where's the village now? And it's us, juggling it all through WhatsApp chats. So many WhatsApp chats I'm in at the moment. Wow. Calendars, career changes, bedtime routines, guys. Who's doing the bedtime routine tonight? And trying to delegate, you really have to become this master at delegating without guilt, trying to do it all without feeling like you're falling apart. So that said, Emma, for anyone hearing about the 5-Hour Club for the very first time, tell us practically how it works.
So we are a platform, first of all, and we work with employers to shape what we call a 5-hour workday. So a 5-hour workday, the idea is that we have a jobs board in which we advertise high quality roles that parents can do within the school hours. So that's kind of one of the key things that we do. But we're also a community, a podcast, and we are also, in a way to help and support and work with employers, we're also running a pilot to look at insights that we can gain over time to understand this way of working, and we can do that with we've been doing that with larger organizations as well. We're also running a coach masterclass series because we want to be able to help and support parents as well, because as we all know, we also that time out of work can have a knock-on effect on our confidence and our identity. So kind of helping and understanding and working with parents. So, on one hand, we work with employers to shape and create these opportunities. And on the other hand, we're there to also support parents to be able to really thrive in their careers. Because what is so important is not just creating these opportunities that are so lacking, but also to make sure that once we get our foot in the door, that we can really thrive. Because as we all know from motherhood, it's a chapter, isn't it? So to be able to really thrive in this chapter so that we don't lose women in the workforce, because that is what's happening.
What are the patterns that you kept hearing again and again that helped you understand what parents are really needing, and what are they sick of hearing?
So one of the most amazing things that come off the back of the post is that we've just had floods of stories from other women, other parents, mums, dads, who sort of sharing their stories, basically sort of my story again and again and again. And it's been really wonderful here because it sort of fuels our fire. But there's some really key things that have been coming out of that. And often one of those things is that women don't feel like they have any choice, that they have to compromise on something. So if they have to go back full time, that they're compromising on spending time with their children. And if they aren't able to go back full time, that they're then compromising on their careers. So they either come out of the workforce completely, or they have to change career into something else. And what we sort of say is, well, that's what we want to change, right? We want to give women back that choice so that they feel like they can do both of those things successfully and not feel like you're failing one or the other. And one of the other things that sort of comes through, so from this time last year, we decided to mark the year by asking people to share their stories on LinkedIn. We had hundreds of parents sharing their story publicly, saying that they belong on LinkedIn or they belong in the workplace. And we had the good, the bad, the ugly come through. Obviously, a lot of redundancy, discrimination, things that are just quite shocking to hear and you just don't expect. But it's the amount of women that have been affected by that is incredible, and it's really saddening, and that's something that keeps us going really in a really awful way, because it's like, well, this is why we're doing it. We need to change that piece of it. But then on the flip side of that, we get these positive stories of, employers that really understand it, who really get it, who really are family friendly and doing that. But the other thing that comes through from women mainly is, at what point do you ask for flexibility? So I have a real bugbear with job adverts that say it's full-time with flexible working, or, full-time or part-time offered. And we're like, well, actually, that's not okay, because what that's doing is putting the onus on the person who's applying to then ask for that flexibility. At what point do they ask? Do they ask when they go to apply to see whether it's even worth applying? Do they go to ask during an interview and highlighting that? Because they know actually if they need that part-time work or those hours, then they're essentially creating a bias. There's a barrier there for potentially somebody who's going to be applying who's full-time. So that's one of the things that we're trying to break down, is actually being very transparent, taking down those barriers. Because at what point do you ask for that? At what point do you disclose that you're a mother? I know Emma had that when she was going to apply for jobs. I remember you saying, well, do I talk about this experience? That would be a really great answer to the question, but it says that I'm a mum. Do I do that? At what point? And somebody said to me the other day, he had hired somebody. He had no idea she was a mum until her first day at work, because she had chosen not to disclose that. And it's such a shame that we're feeling we have to hide that huge part of our identity, and often the thing that drives us the most, from our new employer, because actually that transparency is so key and makes you so much better. So those sort of two things, that sort of question about at what point do I ask for it? I think the flexible working bill is great, but it still sort of puts that question and that onus on the parent to ask for it, and it still gives the employer that control. So it's like, we need to have this shared conversation around that.
And Emma, what are some of the non-negotiables that you've really tried to bake into 5 Hour Work Club from the start?
After the bonkers moment of the viral moment, we had to decide very quickly about what we wanted to do. So I reverted into my natural state as a data person, because what do we do going forward? Well, we ask the people, what do you want? Like, we had an idea that we want to create these job opportunities, but there were other things that we wanted to do. So the first thing we decided was, okay, let's do a survey with our parents and asking them what they want and what do they need. And that survey went out to over 2,500 parents in 64 countries. And the majority, 87%, said they wanted a jobs board. So we were like, okay, that's our non-negotiable. We're going to start with that. And following from that, when we were shaping the jobs board, there were quite a few non-negotiables. So we came up relatively quickly with the verification process, because what we were also very aware of, there are a lot of employers who take advantage of mothers, you know, those like commission only roles, and especially when you're looking for those part-time roles, if you ever see a role that's like working from home and blah blah blah, it's generally too good to be true. We didn't want to be too good to be true. It had to be transparent from the onset. So in shaping these roles, we have a verification process, and the idea is that we have a role that can be done in the school hours, that's 25 hours or less. And again, this all comes off the bat of the survey on what parents want and need. You know, we have nice to have. It's nice to have hybrid or remote, because again, 99% of parents said they need that way of working. But what is a minimum requirement is that each employer doesn't just show the actual salary, they show the actual salary of what you're going to get for those hours, so that you can compare each role, because we know that there are lots of biases in part-time employment. So that was really our first non-negotiable, was to create a high quality jobs board, you know, with these professional roles that are so lacking, but that very clearly you have that transparency, because we want to make it work. We want to make it work from the onset, from the employer, but also the parent. I think those are our key non-negotiables.
It all sounds very succinct and easy, like you've just rolled it all out, but I can imagine those first few months being chaos. Tell me a little bit about building that in the first couple of months. What did that look like for you, starting a new business?
Honestly, it was like we saying it was like when we had our newborns. Like we were going through, it was a very similar time, and weirdly we were going through birthday parties at the same time. Like 3 weeks after the post, I had organised this huge party for my son, and had to do a cake and all of this stuff. And then I think both of our kids got sick. Our youngest, I remember sitting there and responding to people, and they were poorly next to me, and it was that whole balance of. And actually, we always joke, because I just wanted a 5-hour workday. That's all I wanted. And now I was shaping them for other people, but not necessarily doing that myself, because it was just, you know, knowing who to respond to, making sure we were responding to as many people as we possibly could. You know, we were, what are we going to do about this? Doing the survey, getting all that information out there, juggling. I think we did solo parenting between us at that point. It was just, Emma was still working full time, so I was just stealing her at every moment. And then we also had to make the decision of, you know, we were friends. We went into this. We did not go into this being like, we're going to be business partners. This is, you know, it was my idea, and it was, Emma sort of just jumped in with both feet, looked at the data and was like, Amy, you've had 3,000 whatever, you know, reposts, and they've come from these senior leaders and that many parents, and, you know, really just jumped in without me asking. And then we actually weirdly had a spa day as friends booked in about a week or two later, and we actually used that to just walk around in circles through the spa days and strategize about what is this going to look like. You know, are we going to work together? Are we going to become co-founders? What does that look like? What skills have you got? You know, we'd never worked together before. We'd run play dates together, but, you know, that was as far as it went. So, you know, luckily it's turned out that we have very different skill sets, but we had no idea at the time that we did and how we were going to work together. And even our hormonal cycles have not managed to sync, which has been a godsend. That would be a problem. But yeah, it was just madness, just figuring out. And so many people said to us, don't get into bed with each other because you're friends and you don't want to ruin that relationship. And I mean, we're here a year later, and touch wood, it's all going to stay as is. But I think it's made us stronger, and we've learned a lot more about each other. But that initial moment was just like, what are we going to do about this?
It was just chaos, wasn't it? And Amy's exactly. So we weren't just at the birthday parties. Both of our oldest sons were turning 5, so we were organising these really big birthday parties, and tummy bugs, and our partners were away. So there was so much communication, wasn't there, in voice notes and, you know, shared documents, and just trying to make like 1 million decisions in a very short amount of time. Yeah. And also because what is going on behind the scenes are thousands of messages as well.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing is that I don't think we really thought about it. And since literally only recently, somebody said to me, well, you just had a viral post, like, you know, why do you think you just go off and do something like that? And I, truth be told, didn't think about it. We were just like, we've got to take this opportunity. Like, we've been handed this opportunity for whatever reason. We didn't think, you know, what it could be or we just were like, this needs to change. There's obviously a huge problem here, and I felt like it was kind of our duty to make some moves, and no matter what that looked like or what it could look like, it was just kind of we had to make the most of that, because, you know, there were so many people that almost, it felt like, depended on that. Like they were looking to us to all of a sudden, you know, I'd gone from an identity crisis where I didn't want people to know who I was at the school gates, to then sharing all of my dirty washing on Instagram to show the invisible load. It just went completely bonkers.
I think, and it was so incredibly selfishly validating for us, because every single story that we got, we're like, we're all in it together. It is not our problem. It's not your problem. It's not my problem. It's a systemic failure. Like, why is this happening in 2025? Every single story we read, but we weren't necessarily able to respond to, but we wanted to do something to make a tangible change, because the system is so unbelievably broken. And the stories, there were so many of them, but they're so similar. So I think that was definitely the key driver. You know, sometimes when we were very tired in the middle of our newborn baby, and then we'd get a story in and we're like, we just have to do this. There wasn't even a choice.
Yeah, I love that. 5 Hour Club has turned 1 in April. Congratulations on making it through the first year. What have you learned over the past year from working closely with employers, and what are they getting right and also getting really wrong still?
I have learned, and what we've learned is, I wish that organizations, especially larger organizations, knew the gap. And I wish, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the gap, if you don't know about the gap. And the gap in terms of part-time employment, because that was our pain point. We were looking for part-time roles that, you know, I know so many people who became TAs. We need TAs. They're one of the most important jobs, you know, in this country. But in a lot of cases, that is the only job that is available, because it's this term time only role. So I wish that larger organizations knew the gap and the impact that they could make in very transparently advertising a part-time role that is high quality, that is minimum pro rata, if not even more. So I'm going to give you a little example. So there's this piece of government research that looks at employment pathways of parents after having children. And there's this incredible graph I wish I could show you. And it really summarizes myself and my husband. So my husband used to work full-time and now works full-time. And that is the case for the majority of fathers 5 years after employment. So it looks at 3 years and then 5 years. And we're talking about 3,000 parents. So it's a good sample size. Now, if we have a look at mothers, again, it really emphasizes so well, like, my career journey is like, woo, the big old squiggly career. And the biggest picture is that the majority of mothers who were working full-time employment are no longer working in full-time employment. Only 31% return to full-time employment. So the vast majority of mothers do not return to full-time employment. So if you even have a look at who's working today, so according to the Office of National Statistics, if we have a look at women who are in employment, about 10 million are working full-time, nearly 6 million are working part-time. So, you know, there is a chance that we can shape that role when we go back. Now, here's the gap. There is a massive gap in those part-time roles. So even just today, I had a little cheeky look on LinkedIn, and the devil is in the detail. So according to TimeWise, you do really good research on part-time roles. If you can break it down and you can say, okay, so approximately, let's say 12% of roles are advertised part-time. But let's break it down as those specific roles that mothers and fathers are looking for. A lot of those mothers have been working for, 5-10 years. We're not going to be looking for apprentice roles. We're not going to be looking for entry-level roles. So let's break it down. So I think it was about 284,000 plus jobs on LinkedIn that are available. So you can do this. You can play around with it when you go home. That's your homework. So select the filter as a part-time. Okay, and then what we want to do is select the filter, getting rid of apprentice and entry-level roles. So out of a proportion, and then the final filter, I could say, is because we know that the majority of parents want hybrid or remote. It is 0.5% of roles that are available according to those criteria. Now, even if we have a look and say, okay, they want to work on site, it's 2% of roles. So really, we've got to break it down per industry when we are losing so many women in tech. So for example, 50% of women leave tech by the age of 35. So let's have a look at the numbers. We are losing women left, right and centre in their 30s in education, in design, in STEM industries. But what's happening at the same time is we've got a lack of these roles, which we so crucially need. So that's what I'd like the organisations to know.
What were the moments when you realised things on the flip side of that were working, and what were those things?
So if we look at even just our job board, for example, over the last year, we can see that the majority of women and parents, they are applying to remote. Some of them hybrid roles, but mainly the remote roles always get so many more applicants. So we often will say to an employer, if you can make it remote, or if you can make your hybrid requirements very minimum, so they're coming in once a month, once a week, you've got those very clear boundaries and transparent things in place, then do that, because we see that they get more applicants. And we've seen job descriptions now where they will say, even if you don't feel like you meet all of these requirements, then please still apply. And those are the kind of things that we need to encourage women to do more of, is applying for those roles. And we often say that in the part-time roles that we in the job descriptions that we have, be very specific in making sure that they are realistic to the number of hours that you're asking. Because what we don't want, and what we often see, is that with part-time roles particularly, is that they will overcompensate. So you will take on a 15, 20 hour week role, but because your job description says you need to do this, that and the other, then you overwork and you don't get paid for that. So we're speaking to employers about that, and we are seeing that change happening, particularly on our board and particularly in the ones that we're speaking to. And what's really great now is that because of the pilot that we're running as part of the 5-hour workday pilot, we are working with an NHS trust, the KMPT, and they have created roles, particularly 5-hour workday roles for parents to be able to do, with all of these things in mind, because they can see that they will be opening up their talent pool even wider than they thought they were before, even when they were saying full-time or part-time. So they're being a lot more specific. And so we're going to measure the data with the NHS Trust and with a construction company, Kier, who also recognise that they are losing women in tech all over the place. And we're going to measure the data in terms of belonging, productivity, well-being, for what it looks like for a parent doing that role, but also on the flip side, what it looks like for the employer on those things as well. So they can see that this actually works. Because what we've noticed is that these bigger employers, we speak to the DEI leads there, we speak to the people who get it, but there's so many layers before they really will say yes to creating a 5-hour workday role. And unfortunately, we've made our lives difficult by having this criterion saying no to just any old role. But we're doing that to protect parents, and those who get it will do it eventually. And we hope the pilot will show that it can be done, and that the impact that it will have, and the impact it will have on retaining women, retaining people in their workforce, and all of those, the productivity piece is really important as well.
Actually, my next question was going to be, we understand how flexibility is so important getting people back into the workplace, but what feedback have you noticed from parents once they're back in the system?
So, we've had some really great responses from parents that have got those roles, but the one thing that we encourage employers to think about is that if you're giving a parent or a woman this particular role, then you've got to be intentional about what you are then giving them back in return. So even if they are part-time does not mean they're part dedicated. So looking at their salary, they are coming with years of experience and skills. So not just, we say pro rata because we know that there's that whole thing around, well, if I give it to one person, I can't give it to somebody else. And we recognise that it's not like the 4-day week where everybody does this. This is an individual basis thing. So, but recognising that person is coming with so much more experience, give them the salary bump to recognise what they were coming in from, don't reduce their salary, and then give them those opportunities for progression. Just because they are part-time does not mean that they cannot do those senior level roles. We've seen some really great examples of how senior level roles can be done part-time. And we also, for some employers who really don't understand it, they say, senior level can only be done full time and only in the office. So we say, well, have you thought about job shares? Break that role apart. You can get 2 heads for the price of one, essentially. Can it be done that way? You can get 2 25-hour weeks and get more for your money, and you're going to get different skill sets. So it's thinking outside of the box, and I think that's what we're seeing some really great employers doing, but also those sort of red flags who want to tick a box and say, yeah, I'm doing that, but actually, are they? So yeah. We hope that the pilot will sort of open that up to show that this can be done as an alternative way of working, something they can offer to increase their talent pool.
What do you hope that the next year holds for both of you and the 5 Hour Work Club, but not just for the culture and for work, but for everything as a whole?
I think I've realised, particularly in this last month, is that we need to get ourselves out of this echo chamber, okay? We're having these conversations, you know, with normal mums. You're having these conversations with high-profile mums. And we've all got this same issue. And that's why we love your podcast. We're like, but you, if Stacey Judy feels it and we feel it, then this is a huge problem, you know? So I just think we need to get ourselves out of these echo chambers. We need to collaborate with the dads. You know, that's why we really support the work that Dad Shift are doing and on paternity rights, because we can see that if you can share the parental responsibility from the beginning, then that's going to have a huge impact on enabling women to be able to go back to work earlier and on sharing the mental and domestic load, all of those things that, you know, this is why we don't just talk to women and we say it's a parent job board, because as soon as you do that, that closes a lot of men's ears, truth be told. And we know that this is a parent problem. And actually, from the beginning of that post, you know, we had senior CEO, C-suite members saying, oh yeah, my wife feels like this. And they were recognising it, but they weren't necessarily doing anything about it. But now sort of putting it on the flip side and putting it on them too, I think, you know, by working together on this as parents, as our shared problem, then hopefully we can make some changes.
Yeah. I think once you've spoken out a little bit, you realise that you're not alone. This is a universal societal issue that the majority of mothers and parents face. I think for me, CEO Mum has always been about figuring out how we can actually make it work, whether it is through motherhood, ambition, identity, all of it. And not perfectly, because we're never going to figure it out. And when you do think you've figured it out, something always challenges you and makes you humbles you to remember that you have not got it figured out. But we'll figure it out in our own way. And I think it's also something that is ever evolving and ever changing. And I'm learning that from just my little 2 years of experience of how fast they develop and they change and they grow. And even on the podcast of CEO Mum, that like all the different guests that I've had on with kids, with parents, kids of different ages, the needs and the wants and the way that they show up also changes. So it's never fixed. And the whole thing started in my living room because I couldn't really leave the house at the start. And so all of you being in this room today really means a lot, honestly. And I really believe in the power of rooms where, like this, people show up, we share openly and realize that you're not doing it all alone. So thank you so much again. And as I mentioned at the start, we have the wonderful Jane Van Zyl here with us today. After actually one of our podcast conversations in season 2, was it season 1 now? Quite a few of her clips went viral on TikTok. And obviously, you know, you never know what's gonna resonate. But it was specific clips, which I thought really was so interesting because it was all about our workplace rights and knowledge that I thought, oh, maybe we are all aware of this, but clearly we wasn't. And I think it suggested many things, but partly that we are hungry for more of this information. So I would like to invite Jane up and share a few words on working families. Hi, Jane. Hello. Good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to invite you on because when I did the interview with you, I thought it was so interesting and so much. You were just like a fountain of knowledge. I could have gone on for hours talking with you, but I'd love for you to share some of your, first of all, what Working Families Charity is, what it does, and also some of the most common questions and queries that you guys get asked a lot.
What we find the most pressing questions are, a lot of it will depend on income. So we currently have, as you will know, 40% of people who are on universal credit are in work. So we're supporting those parents to get more benefits that they are entitled to. Then there are parents who are asking us about how do they have shared parental leave with their partner. Shared parental leave, of course, means that women are giving up some of their entitlement, but in order to share it with the dads. And as everybody said tonight, that's going to be the game changer. The more we can get paternity leave for men, the more that sharing responsibility happens as early as possible. And we know men want that. Certainly in the 1970s, on average, men were spending 15 minutes a day with their children. 15 minutes a day. Luckily, that has changed enormously, but it could change more. The other thing that people are asking us about is flexible working requests. We obviously also have people asking us about health and safety concerns and wanting to know do their employers have to do a health and safety assessment with them? So we have some people who are working in factories who are contacting us. They may be around chemicals, and they really need some help in terms of getting that proper assessment done, and then being entitled to be offered a job that is similar, but will take them out of that environment. Childcare, I mean, an absolute huge issue. I don't need to tell any of you this. It's about what are your rights, what can you get in terms of your child-free, not your child-free, your tax-free childcare. So all of that, how does it work for you? What are your ability, what can you get based on your particular income? And we know that for many families, the kind of care they want is not necessarily available to them where they are. And of course, then there's the whole issue of flexible working. We know we are huge fans of job shares. We just think it's absolutely the way to go. Nobody else is going to be as interested in your job as you are. And if you've got a work friend who's doing that job, I mean, it's just brilliant. Mm-hmm. And two minds are always better than a single one. So you just get, as an employer, you get so much benefit out of a job share. And for two people who are working a job share together, it can be truly transformational.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jane. I would love to open up to you guys and invite you, our amazing audience, to ask any questions for our panelists, myself, whether something came up for you during this conversation or something that's been sitting with you in your own journey. We'd love to hear from you.
Hi. I feel like I shouldn't ask a question because I don't have kids, but this question is about my friends who do have kids and the people, like everybody around me has kids now. I'm just like the one that hasn't grown up yet. So, but I really want to know like how I can be a good friend and a supportive person when it comes to everybody that has kids around me and like what things matter. Like I try to show up. But you know, what can we do?
I think just show up. I think it's those tangible things that you can do, you know, offer. I remember thinking, you know, offer to take the kids for an hour, 2 hours, you know, overnight even or whatever, just to give the parents a bit of a break, just to have some downtime. You know, it could just even be taking them to the park so your friends can go and have a shower or just have 5 minutes to stay into space, you know, just any sort of tangible things, you know, cook them dinner if you think that if their kids have been sick or they've been sick, you know, those sort of things I think are really helpful. I don't know.
I think the fact that you're asking that question already makes you an unbelievably friend, and that's so nice. And I think exactly what Amy said. So I don't have family nearby me, so she's my village. So friends, I think this day and age, have you ever heard the thing we're working more than we've ever worked before and we're parenting more than we've ever parented? So creating that village is so important, and the fact that you're asking that question, but like that practical, you know, babysitter, it really is life-changing. So yeah, everything that Amy said.
Yeah, I think, and also your patience, just knowing that it may take a month to get back to that WhatsApp message, but we looked at it and we replied in our heads.
First of all, thank you so much to everyone in the panel. Everything you've said has really resonated with me. I'm a mum of two, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, so I'm very much deep in it. Currently looking to get back into the workplace, so it's really resonated in me. I just want to ask your advice, really, on looking for possibly transitioning careers. What are the green flags that you think organisations and industries that do it really well, that genuinely look out for, you know, mums looking back to come back into work, either part-time or flexible? What are the green flags if you're looking at that long job description? Sometimes they're really short. What are some of the things that you've noticed in organisations that do it well, that is really visible when they make job adverts public?
Great question. From what the ones that we've seen, actually the ones that are really short are often a bit of a red flag because they're sort of, you know, you're having to ask the questions and those kind of things. I think the ones where they're really transparent, that they're giving you as much information that they possibly can about the salary and the work, you know, the hybrid work requirements, all of those things are really key to look for. And obviously if they start talking about flexibility within there, if they're talking to you, if they're recognising you as a woman that, you know, is applying to these roles, is really key. I think you can see it quite quickly, or maybe we've been just doing this a little while now, but I think the ones that stand out where they are obviously, when it sounds almost too good to be true, a little bit of a red flag.
I would also say reach out and talk to people who work for that organization. LinkedIn is a great place for networking, and because sometimes, unfortunately, it can depend on your manager. Talk to people, ask what is it like to work for that organization. Are they genuinely flexible? Because you can have a look at their cultures and their value, but talking to people who work there, I think that's what I would do. I would talk to myself a few years ago.
The other thing that we often is about the benefits and looking through the benefits, and when they're really visible about the maternity, paternity, parental benefits that they offer, that's a really big green flag, because then you can see, well, they're being transparent about these things. These are the things that I can ask for at interview because they're showing up already.
At Working Families, we have something called Happy to Talk Flexible Working, and it's not perfect. I'm not suggesting that everybody who uses it is perfect. But that is one of the things that we would say, because the organisations that are saying they want to work flexibly, at least have the conversation with them.
My question was in regards to, you shared a lot of statistics about working mums 9 to 5 and a lot of them leaving after 35 and not coming back. Where did you have any statistics on whether they started their own businesses? Because one thing that helped me through not wanting to go to work even after the pandemic was starting my own business, and I started my own property business. And then the only time I took the step to go back into full-time work was to work for my sister-in-law. I'm now the CEO of her company, and she also has that flexible understanding. And I mean, she was asking me, what are the red flags for having a manager? For me personally, it was a case-by-case basis, because I had men that advocated for me as a mum when I was in the workplace, and I had a woman that didn't advocate for me as when I was a mum in the workplace. So going back to my question, I know I'm saying a lot of things. I'd really like to know if there's any statistics about mums becoming business owners and become more successful, because that's what really helped me through having 4 kids and earning my own money.
We're in a really interesting place in our workplace, and it's been 5 years since the pandemic, and when things changed overnight really quickly. And I was thinking, I bet that there are way more businesses that are set up, and because we can do that remotely. So my answer is I don't know, but I am going to find out. And then my second answer to that, which I do know, is that and I'm probably going to say this because I always do, but King's University, they have a global institute for women's leadership. And they did research on the motherhood penalty, and not just in terms of job salary, because there is a big drop off in job salary and we pretty much stay, much lower than the fathers. But what they also said is there is a motherhood penalty in job quality. So because of the type of jobs that we want and that we need, and those flexible jobs, those part-time roles, a lot of them are, the research said it's not just me, that they are lower quality. And we're talking about jobs that have less autonomy, less flexibility, and there are so many mothers that we know that are massively overqualified for roles. So that I do know, but I'm excited to find out about the business later.
So about flexible working is obviously now so many companies are walking back on all their lovely COVID promises and mandating standard 3, normal now is getting up to 4 days a week in the office. So how do you see the conversation about flexible working evolving over the next couple of years?
It's a good question, and it's one that we often get actually from mums who maybe took a remote role before or during COVID and are now having been asked back into the office. And we say that actually we see 2 camps. So we see the ones who are doing the return to office mandates because they just think it's the right thing to do and they have no stats to show that actually it's more productive. And then you get the other side who have been doing it and seen it's more productive and seen they're getting more out of their employees, and they probably will stay. Without the pressure of the other side of the camp, they will probably stay, luckily, that remote hybrid work. And what we say when we're working with employers is that really think about how you are going to work intentionally now with remote workers, because and Emma will give maybe some information around this about the proximity bias, you know, when people are in the office compared to those who are not in the office. And obviously, as women, as parents, you often would choose to be outside of the office, and the impact that could have if it's not done intentionally. You know, you might feel that you have a lack of belonging, a lack of progression because you're not seen there. So now we've seen that remote working can work really well for companies, and there's so much that it can give. Now we've got to be intentional about it and really support those who are offering it still, so that they can keep up and prove that it's better than going back to the office just for the sake of it.
There's a group of people that are looking at getting women, 40% of women, into the boards of the large organisations that are in the FTSE 250, and they are nearly at 40%, which is absolutely fantastic. It's not perfect. Sometimes it's only one woman on the board. Now they're changing their goal to have a CEO, a CFO, or a COO on the board. Those are the things that are going to make the change, because you are then going to have people who are going, but of course flexible working works. Of course the 5-hour day works. We've done it. We know how to manage people who are doing it. So I'm really hopeful, but yeah, it's a bit of a blip.
Yeah.
And the only other thing that I would say, is that the pushback that we're getting means that we're doing something right. If we weren't making a difference, there would be no pushback.
I think we've got time for one more question.
So my name's Lauren. I'm a busy working mum of one. I've got a 3-year-old at home. I made the decision to leave my job during mat leave and be really audacious and find a work pattern that worked for me. And that was great until they backtracked on their flexible work policy. And I said, you know what, that's fine. I'll be audacious again. I'll start my own thing. And I speak to so many women day to day who are going through, I document my journey online as well. So many women have reached out and said, how do you do this? I can't move. I'd love to move. I can't do this. I'm stuck financially. I want to increase my income. I don't know now how. I'm stuck. And for a lot of women, they have to stay where they are right now because employment world, sketchy, redundancies, all sorts of things are happening. And I just wanted to ask, was there any advice that you would give in terms for the women who have to stay but want to change the culture in their organisations?
That's a really great question. Actually, recently in the last week, I've had 2 of the mums that we speak to who have come and said, actually, they've been offered redundancy, voluntary redundancy. They potentially could take that, but they're petrified of what the workforce and the environment is out there. So she said, should I do this or should I go for and try and stick in and go with what I know? I've got a relatively good position. It's not great, but I get paid well. I work the hours that I like. What should I do? And honestly, I couldn't answer that question. And I found it really difficult because on one hand, I really wanted her to make a change and go somewhere else and, use all the skills and really get recognised for all the things she could do. But I also knew that for the salary that she was getting, it would be so hard to find a similar flexible job in that way. And so, yes, that feeling of stuck, the fact that you said stuck is exactly that feeling I think so many people are feeling. The only recommendation I would give on that would be looking at what you can then do for your culture in the place that you are. Can you create a parents network, a women-only support group, things where you can have these conversations, you can work together, you can go banging on the door together? Can you create a business case? Can you take it forward and say, this is actually what I need. I deserve to get paid this. This is what the market rate is for somebody who's getting paid this. This is my experience. This is what I can do in terms of your flexible work. And this is, the benefit it will have. This is the increase in productivity. If I didn't commute into the office, all these things. Think about it then from the employer's point of view. What benefits will that give them? I might be in the office for 4 days, but actually if I was at home for 4 days, I could get 2 extra hours done a day. So, look at it in that way. So taking it forward and sort of being assertive in your space, in the culture you're in, and trying to, again, be intentional about what you can do for yourself, but also the other people around you in your workspace to make some changes, even if they're tiny changes, even if it's asking for different benefits, annualized hours, things that, have worked for you and other people might not know about, having those conversations. And then almost, if you could then, take that and take it to other organisations, having these sort of cross-organisation conversations, coming to networking things, talking to, outside of your own echo chamber again, to sort of raise that voice, because I think that's the bit, is that I think so many of us feel, and I know I felt it, was that you feel so isolated and alone when you're going through this. You feel very stuck, and you feel like nobody else really understands it or gets it, but the fact of the matter is the majority of us do. So the more we speak out, the more we start banging on the door with our business cases and our flexible working requests, then hopefully it will start to change the culture, even if in tiny ways. But yeah, I don't know if you've got any more.
The power of community, it is so important. Connecting with people who are in the same boat and having those conversations can really genuinely help, and it could be conversations about salary, whatever it is. There's so many things, that is so important to have those conversations. And the second thing I would say, remember in the workplace, and this goes for every single one of us, and it doesn't matter if you're a senior leader, wherever you are, we all have a sphere of influence that will ultimately impact on company culture. So for example, my manager, one of the very first things that she said to me, and yes, this is in a LinkedIn post, but it was the best thing a manager ever said to me, and she said, block out your school runs on your team's calendar. So she modeled those boundaries straight away, and the fact that she did that had a massive impact on me. And how small was that action? So even little actions that you can do in modeling boundaries, which are so crucial for parents, and especially if you're working remotely. So bear that in mind, because anything that you do also has an impact on others as well.
I would say phone our legal advice line. Because there may very well be options for you, and one of the things that the team do brilliantly is help you. They are part of your community. They help you and empower you to have those positive conversations where you know exactly what your rights are and also what your rights aren't. So that's very helpful. We also, as a charity, and I'm not suggesting that the employers that we work with are perfect, but we have a list of employer members on our website, and they should and do offer flexible working. And we've recently launched something called Family Friendly Workplaces Certification, which we hope is going to be a badge that will allow parents to know, actually, those are the good guys. Obviously, 5 Hour Club. I mean, why wouldn't you? I think for me personally, and this is a personal reflection, this is not me as the Chief Exec at Working Families, is I have always found in my career that it is easier to get another job when I'm in a job. Leaving the labour market, obviously sometimes you have to do that for your mental health, for whatever the reasons are, but absolutely try all of those culture change things, but stay in the job if you possibly can.
And can I just say one more thing, because it really did help me. So actually some of the coach, and I'm not doing this as an ad, but some of the coach masterclasses that we've done are incredibly uplifting to help with that confidence, because we do sometimes are really lacking that confidence when we take a break from work or even when we're in work. And I know that a mum said to me, she was like, I used some of that masterclass, and I went back to my employer and to navigate and shape a 5-hour workday. So I think having that set of skills and coaches can really help as well.
Well, thank you so much, and just a massive heartfelt thank you for all of you being in this room tonight, and join me in giving these lovely ladies a massive round of applause.